Travis Reier, the BamaOnline.com staff, following the media viewing periods at Tuesday's football practice at the University of Alabama. We're right outside Coleman Coliseum, just around the corner from the Thomas Drew practice fields here off Bryant Drive on a beautiful, beautiful late March afternoon in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The Crimson Tide back to work after a couple of days off the practice field. Alabama in full pads out there this afternoon. We did, Charlie Potter and myself, do some housekeeping as it relates to injuries, availability, those type of things as we head into another full week, or at least a 3-practice week. Going to be Tuesday, Thursday, and then a Saturday scrimmage for Alabama this week. But as far as availability and attendance at today's practice, pretty much about the same. We did see Terrell Lewis, the outside linebacker, out there. He wasn't doing much at all. He was doing a little bit of light running out there in the early stages of practice, but didn't look like he was going to do much beyond that during the workout. So Terrell Lewis was on the practice field, but again, appeared to be very limited in terms of his availability. Offensive lineman Matt Womack was at practice on Tuesday. He was dressed in full gear, but similar to Terrell, didn't look like it was going to be a heavy workload for Matt Womack during the workout. He had full pads on, but in terms of the things that you look for in an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, that's a lot of tape, maybe some gloves for the lineman, in terms of footwear, braces, tape jobs, those type of things. Not a lot of that going on with Matt Womack. So, as for how it impacted their various units, not so much in terms of what we saw with the outside linebackers. You still got Anthony Jennings out there. You still got Christopher Allen, who, like Terrell Lewis, coming off a knee injury of his own. Yabi Anoma out there. Jerez Parks working with the outside linebackers. So about what we see typically with Sal Sunseri and those guys, about what you would expect with Terrell Lewis limited for the practice. As far as the offensive line, what we saw there was Evan Neal, the early enrollee, the true freshman. With Womack limited, we saw Evan Neal at left guard between Chris Owens, or at least inside of Alex Leatherwood during the workout. You also had Emil Ekiyor, who's been working at left guard, at right guard, along with Jedrick Wills at right tackle. So that's kind of the domino effect that it appeared that Matt Womack's limited status had on the offensive line during the early stages of Tuesday's practice. As for other things that we caught a glimpse of during the workout, the secondary, we saw a nickel look from the Alabama defensive backfield. In that look, what we saw was Patrick Surtain, the second, at right corner, Trayvon Diggs at the start position, and then at left corner, we saw Nigel Knott. I think that had a lot to do with Josh Jobe during the individual periods while we were out there. He was being tended to by athletic support staff, trainers, managers. I'm not sure if he had a equipment malfunction or maybe a slight issue with a lower leg, but he was on the field, but seated on the sideline being tended to for a various issue that we're not totally certain of. But he did get up at the end of the media viewing periods. Didn't look to be anything of a serious nature in terms of Josh Jobe. So I would think Josh Jobe at left corner in that nickel package, and that lines up with what we've talked about in the offseason into spring practice, with the potential for Trayvon Diggs to go back to playing that star position in the nickel, perhaps even the dime. Shyheim Carter is out there, as we've talked about, but he too continues to be in a limited status in a black non-contact jersey. So that's something you got to factor in without him really being full go so far this spring. The safeties in that first team defense, by the way, Jared Maiden alongside Xavier McKinney. Then when you had the twos come out, Shyheim Carter did step in at the star position. Jalen Armour-Davis has a left shoulder brace now to go along with that knee brace that he's coming back with from the ACL, was at right corner. Scooby Carter looked to be at the left corner, and then your safeties were Eddie Smith and Daniel Wright. So that's kind of an overview of a brief glimpse into the nickel package that we saw on the back end. Also saw Pete Golding, the inside linebackers coach and defensive coordinator, working extensively with his guys at inside linebackers. The first two guys up continue to be Dylan Moses, Josh McMillan, followed by Markel Benton, Jalen Moody, and then your third group, Ali Cahoe, and early enrollee Shane Lee. So those are the areas that I paid most attention to during the workout. Did see some quarterback, running back interaction during the practice. You had some pairings and some sort of zone read looks, and also some quick flips to the flat to the backs. You had Tua Tagovailoa with Najee Harris in one group. You had Mac Jones working with Brian Robinson, and you had Taulia Tagovailoa working with Jerome Ford. Now, Chadarius Townsend, who is working with the running backs to this point in the spring, he was in the other group with Paul Tyson, Lane Hatcher, Braxton Barker. It was kind of your quarterback, running back looks during the individual drills out there today. So there you go. It's kind of what we saw out there today. Obviously, basketball is also a hot topic. You've seen some movement today in the coaching ranks with Steve Prohm finalizing an extension at Iowa State. There's a coaching change taking place at Nebraska that is likely to impact Fred Hoiberg in terms of his availability in this search. And Arkansas this afternoon announcing that Mike Anderson will not return for the Razorbacks. So more jobs opening up, some jobs looking as if they're stabilizing, some other jobs looking as if they're going to be filled. A lot going on for Greg Byrne in the men's basketball coaching search. What do you got for me today? Any questions, comments, suggestions before we wrap up? Again, it's beautiful out here. All we need is a train right behind us there. Daryl asking about Mac Jones. You know, I think Mac Jones is going to prove to have taken another step in his development. I know all the focus is on Taulia Tagovailoa, Paul Tyson, for reasons even beyond their ability. But I think Mac Jones is that kind of guy. I think he's wired in a way that he's anxious to prove that, hey, I'm still here, and I'm not just here. I'm capable of holding this thing down behind Tua. I'm capable of playing significant reps, legitimate reps, important reps, if it comes down to it. So my expectation for Mac Jones as we get into scrimmage work beginning this Saturday is that that he's going to do some good things. Ben Davis, we walked by the weight room on the way out of practice today, and we saw Ben Davis in the weight room. He continues to deal with that leg injury. The D-line, you know, I didn't spend as much time today. They were kind of off to our left over there with Brian Baker. But as we've talked about before, the addition of these early enrollees has just really gone a long way in fortifying that depth chart. You know, LeBrian Ray, Raekwon Davis, Fedarian Mathis, I think is a top three right now. It's pretty clear those are the top three. But then even some guys that are going into their second year in the program. I think Christian Barmore has a chance to really be an important player in that mix this year. We'll see about Stephon Wynn Jr., but then with Antonio Alfano coming in, Justin Aboigbe, DJ Dale, you know, that's where they've really kind of helped themselves. New kicker, you know, we haven't seen much of Will Reichard, the early enrollee from Hoover, but I'm expecting that if there is live kicking work or kicking work of any kind in the scrimmage on Saturday, we might hear as much about Will Reichard as anybody else. We talked about Nigel Knott a moment ago. Today in the nickel package, while Josh Jobe was off on the sideline being tended to, Nigel Knott was in there with that first group in the nickel at left corner. So there you go. Yeah, the quarterbacks again, what we saw today was Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, Taulia, and then another group with Paul Tyson, Lane Hatcher, Braxton Barker. Jalen Moody, we talked about earlier, Jason. You know, he's right there in that mix at inside linebacker. I think it's a competition, a push that could go well into fall camp, perhaps. Josh McMillan, right now, looks to be the guy benefiting the most from his experience and time in the program. But between Moody, Markel Benton, Ali Cahoe, even Shane Lee, I think you got Christian Harris coming in this summer too, a fantastic athlete, a little bit short on experience at inside linebacker for him, but pretty wide open right now. Anything else before we get out of here? Yeah, Jason, not much yet in terms of noticeable changes to the offense. And we've talked about it before. You've heard Nick Saban refer to it. It's Alabama's offense. It wasn't Jim McElwain's offense. It wasn't Brian Dable's offense. It wasn't Mike Locksley's. Now, each of those guys, for the most part, kind of left their impression, had a little something unique that they added to the mix. But the basic parameters of offensive football at Alabama probably aren't going to change that much. Drez Parks is with the outside linebackers, or at least I had seen him out there. I didn't really watch the outside linebackers and defensive linemen yet. James, no basketball coach yet that I know of as we do this. We talked about a minute ago kind of the continued openings that pop up. Dominant pass rushers, I think you got to look at that in two different areas. Interior, which you saw from Quinnen Williams last year, was a monster. I think Raekwon Davis has that ability to be that guy on the interior that he was a couple of years ago. Just didn't have that type of production in 2018. And then on the edge, Anfernee Jennings really took a step up in terms of negative plays, whether it was pass rush, whether it was TFLs. We've talked so much about Anoma and Lewis and Christopher Allen that, Anfernee Jennings is going to be on the field a lot again in 2019. So I think he has a chance, Anfernee Jennings, to surprise some people maybe. Shouldn't be a surprise, but maybe a surprise. Anything else? Yeah, I hear you, David. Bigfoot sightings now in jersey number 1. Hey, that's going to wrap it up for a Tuesday edition of Instant Analysis. Jason, we talked about Evan Neal earlier. I was working with the ones today, it looked like anyway, at left guard with Matt Womack, limited right now. So there you go. That's it from Coleman Coliseum on a Tuesday. We'll do this again Thursday. Charlie Potter's practice report, I'm sure, is up or is coming up at BamaOnline.com. You've got Nick Saban post-practice tonight, so you're going to want to pay attention to that. Beginning right around 7 Eastern, 6 Central is when you can expect Nick Saban at the podium. And continued coverage at BamaOnline.com. Thanks a lot, guys and gals.